With the Prime Resurgence update, 4 new Warframe augments have been introduced. 1 for Lavos, 1 for Trinity, and 2 for Xaku. Let's explore these new mods, see how they can be used, and if you should add them to your build. I'm the Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. I'm going to start with Lavos, for the totally biased reason of being a Lavos main. He's my most used Warframe for various reasons, which I've covered in a previous video. But if you do want to see more of him in action, you can always check out my live streams at twitch.tv/theengineer. His augment is Swift Bite, adding range and a cooldown reduction effect to his first ability, Ophidian Bite. So long as the ability hits 4 or more enemies, all of his ability cooldowns decrease, including Ophidian Bite itself. At base, this is a 4-second cooldown reduction, which is modified by Lavos' efficiency stat to a maximum of 7 seconds, with 175% efficiency. This does have the slightly memey potential of allowing Lavos to cast Ophidian Bite once every single second, although you'd be hard pushed to get much value out of such an approach, as you'll be sacrificing mods throughout the rest of the build, losing either range, tank or strength, as well as compromising his duration. Let's look at a little bit more rational approach for this then. Lavos' demand for range remains unshaken, and I'll still strongly advise using the Umbral set for Lavos. Since my initial Lavos video, the effect of Transmutation Probe, and therefore efficiency, has been buffed, meaning that Blind Rage is a less valuable mod to slot in. Instead, I now recommend Primed Continuity on that V polarity. Taking this all into account, we can drop Augur Reach for Swift Bite. We don't lose too much range, with Ophidian Bite actually losing no range at all. This in turn gives us the basic 4-second cooldown reduction from Swift Bite. You can combo this with Transmutation Probe to stack up significant cooldown reduction in mere moments. With just 4 enemies in range, Swift Bite gives 4 seconds reduction, Transmutation Probe gives 6 seconds and instantly recharges Swift Bite, allowing you to cast it once again for another 4-second reduction. This will shave a full 14 seconds off the 30-second cooldown of Catalyze at minimum. Now, unlike Transmutation Probe, Swift Bite gives no additional benefit for more than 4 enemies, and it gives no benefit at all for less than 4 enemies. It's all or nothing. Now, if you're not quite so heavily focused on range, say if you're fighting in tight conditions, or if you're in an area with lots of verticality to it, you can instead look to increase your efficiency. By slotting in Fleeting Expertise instead of Stretch, we drop from 235% range to 190% range. In exchange, Swift Bite now recovers 6.4 seconds of cooldown, and Transmutation Probe recovers 2.4 seconds per enemy. Given again the same 4 enemies in range, using the 1-3-1 combo, you'll reduce the cooldown of Catalyze from 30 seconds to only 7.6 seconds, before even taking into account how long it takes you to cast the other abilities. With another follow-up cast of Swift Bite, you'll be able to recast Catalyze roughly every 5 seconds, with just 4 enemies around to recharge from. Now this all unfortunately runs into a very serious issue with Lavos. One of his core details is the ability to infuse a chosen damage type into every ability cast. This isn't really optional because failing to infuse in this way will cost you a status effect, which is a problem for Catalyze damage, as well as only dealing half of the possible damage of the ability. It's a good idea to keep infusing different damage types to get the most out of Lavos, or at minimum you should be infusing at least something, even if you're not trying to be perfectly efficient. With all this rapid casting going on, thanks to the massively reduced cooldowns, I found that infusing the different damage types along with everything else going on is a little bit too intensive even for PC, let alone for console. This goes double for the fact that it's a combination of tap and hold to cast, which must be done in the right order for you to succeed. So with this issue taken into consideration, Lavos' Swift Bite is at least a decent augment to allow for more repeat casting, at the expense of only a small to moderate amount of range loss, depending on what build you choose to go with. For me personally, I wouldn't go for the build that increases the efficiency just because of the difficulty of actually being efficient with that build, making it a little bit of a waste. But if you can get used to the flow and the rotation of things, then it's certainly an option to look into. At the very least, swapping out Augur Reach for Swift Bite will still be a significant boost to your cooldown reduction, at least when you use it intelligently. Moving on then to our second augment, we look to Trinity. Champion's Blessing will give Trinity increased primary and secondary critical chance equal to the percentage of health restored with her Blessing ability. While the mod states that the maximum is 350%, it doesn't tell you that this stacks up on recast. So long as you do not let the ability run out, you maintain the boost every single time you recast it. What's more, any new healing done is added to your existing buff. So say you're solo, you're down to half health, you cast Blessing, fully healing yourself and gaining 50% critical chance on primaries and secondaries. During the buff window, you take no further damage, but you don't want to lose the buff, so you recast it to keep your 50% buff. Then after this, you take only 5% health damage before you need to recast Blessing. This final recast once again restores you fully, and it also adds that 5% to your critical buff, bringing you up to 55%. Similar to Chroma's Vex armor, so long as you do not let the ability stop, your boost only climbs higher and higher up to your maximum. You can get this buff from more than just healing Warframes though. Anything that is instantly healed by Blessing will trigger Champion's Blessing. This includes Companions, Necros Summons, Kavor Defectors, just to name a few. Necros especially is a great pair with Trinity, as the Shadows will very quickly need healing, rapidly charging up your augment. Likewise, Garuda's ability to just throw away her own health will allow Trinity to quickly charge up. However, defense objectives which heal over time from Blessing, such as Cryopods and Excavators, do not trigger Champion's Blessing. For a Trinity that's playing solo, or otherwise with allies who refuse to get hurt, she can instead turn to the often overlooked Helminth ability, Mind Control. By damaging an enemy, then mind controlling it, it becomes a valid target for Blessing. Do this a few times over, and you're already at the maximum bonus. This also comes with the standard mind control benefits, such as being able to give yourself additional damage reduction if you mind control an ancient healer. The critical chance bonus you can get from Champion's Blessing is an enormous amount, and this also gives Trinity an improved role in Eidolon hunts. For example, on the Rubico Prime, Trinity will get a total of 133% more critical chance, well over double what the Rubico Prime will normally have with critical delay modded in. This is nearly triple the bonus that Harrow would provide to the Rubico. Now, this buff is only for yourself, which does limit the effectiveness. You also need to be healing health damage and a fair amount of it to get that substantial buff. So with fewer players in the squad, lower level enemies, or enemies too high level, you may find that having a suitable amount of health damage to heal without dying can be that bit harder to come by. Also, if you miss the window for recasting, this will send you right the way back to square one, which can definitely be annoying. As for building for it though, Champion's Blessing is only affected by duration, while Blessing itself is affected by duration and a little bit of strength. As a result, a duration focused build would work wonders. I also recommend modding in Stretch to still keep some range for the rest of the kit. By using the Aura Combat Discipline, you can maintain a steady gain of crit bonus by damaging yourself with your kills. This also stacks quite nicely with Arcane Avenger to give you even more critical chance bonuses. The repeat casts of Blessing should be more than enough to prevent you from dying from your own success. If you feel confident in managing this, you can even skip out Vitality to make it where each hit point lost is a greater overall percentage for you. As for Prime Sure-Footed, it isn't necessary on Trinity, as you can offload knockdowns to enemies with the use of Link. However, for the no-nonsense always-on immunity to that status effect, it's still a worthwhile slot just to make life that little bit easier. If you can go without, this will free you up to add Umbral Intensify in place of Normal Intensify, giving you a higher resistance bonus from Blessing as well. And lastly on this build, Natural Talent is overall a good pickup, given just how much time you're spending casting. And just like with Prime Sure-Footed, it's not strictly necessary, but it's quality of life that makes the frame flow just that much better. Finally then, we have the two augments for Xaku. The simpler of the two to process is a Vampiric Grasp. If an enemy is affected by either Xaku's Armor Strip ability Gaze, or the Vast and Time, then Xaku heals 25 health when that enemy is shot by one of the guns stolen by Grasp of Lock. This healing is modified by your strength. Aside from that, there's nothing particularly special to mention about this augment. It just grants Xaku self-healing where previously it didn't exist, and it does so by incentivizing you to use two of Xaku's other abilities, which are themselves already very strong. In fact, in the same update that brought out these augments, we saw a change to the Vast and Time that now allows you to recast it mid-duration, rather than having to disable it and then recast it. As a result, the flow of combining this augment with the rest of the kit goes pretty smoothly. The second augment is more build defining, and that is the Relentless Lost. Each time Xaku casts their third ability, the Lost, they gain a 35% bonus to strength for their next cast of the Lost. This bonus stacks up to 3 times over with no timer on it, but the bonus resets if you cast the same ability option twice in a row from the Lost. So say for example if you cast Gaze and then Accuse, you'll have a 70% bonus to your next ability cast from the Lost options, but if you cast Accuse for that third casting, you'll reset back down to 35%. This means in practice, you can get all the way up to 105% ability strength bonus on the Lost for the price of a single mod slot. If you have 95% or higher ability strength, this would max out the defense reduction from Gaze, as well as giving you a strong bonus to Accuse and Deny, increasing the number of affected targets and the amount of damage you can deal. Also, as an added quality of life feature with this augment, when you cast a Lost ability with it equipped, it automatically rotates the Lost to the next ability variant. This means you can cast repeatedly, rather than having to constantly alternate between casting and switching. So just be aware of this when you're casting, as it can throw you off compared to normal Xaku gameplay. Now both of these new augments for Xaku can actually work together reasonably well. They don't step on each other's toes mechanically. The only real cost is the mod slot they take up. The Relentless Lost is an easy slot to choose for just how much impact it makes. No matter what mod you were going to put there, such a high strength on the ability that needs it the most is just an absolute win. Vampiric Grasp is a much more optional mod, just coming down to if you want that self-healing capacity. So for the two augments together, I've gone for this build here. The high range is beneficial to all abilities, while the slightly positive strength and duration help keep the kit running and effective. Notably here, with 140% base strength, growing power for an extra 25%, and then a single stack of the Relentless Lost, you'll have a total of 200% strength for the Lost abilities, even if you keep casting the same ability over and over. This means you'll get the maximum defense reduction from Gaze straight away. Now if you intend to run without Vampiric Grasp, you can go for Stretch to amp up the range that much further for the same mod drain. Likewise, if you don't need the strength as much, especially if you're not intended to get as much out of Grasp with Lock, you can swap out Power Drift for Cunning Drift, and swap out Intensify for your preference of either Augur Reach or Augur Message. This will give you vastly more range, or a mix of range and duration. Your base strength will drop down to 95%, and rising to 120% with Growing Power, and yet even without Growing Power active, you can still get the full 200% strength necessary to get the most out of defense reduction on the Lost. If you want to invest even more Forma into Xaku, you can absolutely swap out Normal Flow for Prime Flow, and swap out the Drift mod for Prime Sure-Footed. However, both of these aren't crucial to making the builds work, so you can skip over these if you want to. All told, these augments for Xaku don't really change the playstyle, but instead they give you much more flexibility and survivability options to get that extra bit out of their kit. And that's the rundown and builds when it comes to these 4 new augments. So which of these is your favourite? Let me know down in the comments which build you'd like to try out the most, or tell us how it goes for you. If you have enjoyed this video, or learned something new, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe as well to catch more as it goes live. That's all from me for now though, so as always, use augments, cast better, and fight well, Tenno.